19 years before the Battle of Yavin and destruction of the first Death Star, a battle was waged on the volcanic mining planet of Mustafar. The conflict was between two powerful warriors who had once called each other brothers. At the tail end of the confrontation, the Jedi Master known as Obi-Wan Kenobi attained a superior position to his fallen Jedi apprentice, Anakin Skywalker, now deemed Darth Vader. When Anakin leaped to again engage with Obi-Wan, the Jedi Master cut him down, severing his remaining organic limbs and watching as he tumbled onto the bank of the volcanic river. But then Obi-Wan made a choice that would forever shape the galaxy. Lacking the strength to finish his former friend, Obi-Wan departed the planet, leaving Anakin to die of his injuries. But he did not die. Anakin lived on, becoming more machine than man, and bringing great hardship to the galaxy. But what if this had not happened? What if Obi-Wan had mustered the courage to finish the newly anointed Sith and ensure his death? Welcome to What If Star Wars Explained, where we take a piece of the Star Wars universe and flip it to analyze the unforeseen consequences. For this installment, we will be discussing if Obi-Wan had actually finished Anakin and granted him a merciful death on the shores of the volcanic river. Following the death of Anakin, Obi-Wan would depart Mustafar with an injured Padme, who, like in regular continuity, would give birth to two healthy twins named Luke and Leia. Padme unfortunately would pass on, leaving the children with no mother or father to protect them. But Obi-Wan would step forward, promising to take both children and teach them the ways of the Force, so that one day they may be able to right the wrongs their father did. In regular continuity, the major reason Luke and Leia were split up was because of Vader, and now, in this scenario with him dead, the twins would be allowed to stay together, and on top of this, undergo Jedi training. The Emperor will still be a factor though, and would have interest in the children, but he would be widely more preoccupied with running the Empire in its very infant stages, and dealing with the loss of his apprentice. Yoda would agree to Obi-Wan taking the children, but he would tell him that one day he may call upon him for his help. The two would then part ways, with Obi-Wan now venturing to Alderaan with Bail Organa, where he would have support and a safe place in which to look after the children. Across the galaxy, the Emperor would be frantic, searching for an apprentice, but sensing the remaining Jedi still around who had managed to escape the early commencement of Order 66. Palpatine would know if he did not react quickly, the Jedi could very well return to power, with them now being fully aware of his true identity as Darth Sidious. Because of this, Palpatine would be forced to do something he never had before, step out of the shadows and conduct the extinction of the Jedi himself. As a note, because I think it would play out this way is because of this. While the initial shock and commencement of Order 66 killed a lot of Jedi, many still remained and posed a huge threat. The Jedi were only kept in check and not allowed to form a return or uprising because Palpatine had had something to keep them scared and hidden away. This something was Darth Vader, whose main mission after the rise of the Empire for years following was to hunt and kill remaining Jedi. To give some perspective, things were just barely beginning to quiet and the echoes of the Jedi dying out at the time of A New Hope, which was nearly 2 decades after the initial Jedi Purge began. With the lack of Vader in this scenario, Palpatine would be forced to do this himself. Palpatine, however, would take great measures, ensuring very few ever saw him conduct his missions and be aware of his role as Eradicator. He would be deadly and quick, with no Jedi rivaling his power. Palpatine would search and hunt even groups of Jedi at a time, killing them with his great command of the dark side, and if it came to it, cutting them down with his skill with the lightsaber. The Jedi would begin to fade away, even faster than they had when Vader was tasked with their destruction. All that would remain of many once proud Jedi would be their own ashes or dismembered arms and legs scattered throughout the galaxy. Time would pass, and Yoda would see the great suffering of his brothers and sisters, feeling their many deaths through the Force. One day, Yoda would have enough, calling upon Obi-Wan, asking him to prepare for his arrival on Alderaan. Yoda would come to Alderaan, seeing the still very young Luke and Leia, taking great joy in seeing their growth. Yoda would sit Obi-Wan down, telling him the time had come for the madness that was the Emperor to end. With Palpatine more out in the open, Yoda believed that with the combined effort of himself and Obi-Wan, they could vanquish him and again bring peace to the galaxy. Obi-Wan would agree, and now the time would have come for the Jedi to fight back. The reason I see it playing out like this is because in the regular timeline, Obi-Wan never went after Vader or the Emperor because he was protecting Luke, and Yoda never did because he saw that that was not the role he needed to play, and that he would have to be present when Luke was ready to learn the ways of the Jedi. An assassination of the Emperor would also be something extremely difficult, almost impossible, even for a Jedi like Yoda, especially at the time of the Empire because Palpatine constantly moved and locked himself away. But now, due to the absence of Vader, Palpatine has been forced into the open, and Yoda and Obi-Wan have become aware of it. But even with the Jedi now planning to confront the Dark Lord, Palpatine would have something they would not be prepared for. In an Imperial palace light years away from Alderaan, a now resting Emperor Palpatine would sit on his throne, taking a momentary break from his constant killings of the Jedi. Below him, at the base of his throne, kneeled a dark-robed figure swearing allegiance to the Sith and the Empire. Palpatine would order the figure to rise and remove his hood. The figure would stand triumphantly, tossing his dark robes to the ground, revealing who we know as the Grand Inquisitor. So a quick explanation, even though Palpatine has been really busy, he also knew he must prepare a potential apprentice, and I believe the best choice for him would in fact be the Grand Inquisitor. In Rebels, the Grand Inquisitor is basically second only to Vader among the ranks of the Empire, as far as skill and Jedi killing is concerned, so I think Palpatine at this point would have eventually encountered and swayed him to the dark side, similarly to the way Vader presumably did in canon. The only difference is that what we know in this story as the Grand Inquisitor is now a full-fledged apprentice and Sith Lord under Palpatine. Palpatine too would rise from his throne, stepping down the steps to greet his apprentice. Together, we will destroy the Jedi. Their power is failing, and few remain, Palpatine would say. Very good, my master, his apprentice would respond. Suddenly, an Imperial advisor would run into the room. An angered Palpatine would look up in displeasure as the advisor would halt before him. My lord, the advisor would say, a Jedi has been spotted attacking an Imperial base, holding up a hologram of a fully robed Jedi, slaying stormtroopers. A bold one, the Dark Apprentice would comment. Yes, very bold, and foolish, Palpatine would respond. A shining example of the arrogance of the Jedi. We will go together to slay the scum, and then we will continue with your training. You have much to learn. The two Sith would then depart the palace and head for the base. On the base, a fully cloaked Obi-Wan would be cutting down stormtroopers and attempting to gain as much attention as possible. Obi-Wan would be careful not to reveal his face and to change his fighting style and patterns as to not be recognizable by Palpatine. A few miles away from the base, Master Yoda would be hiding, awaiting the arrival of the Emperor. Eventually, Palpatine and his apprentice would arrive at the base, creating a thunderous entrance in an Imperial shuttle. Together, both Sith, Master and Apprentice would exit the ship, igniting their sabers and stepping in front of the Jedi. So foolish, a last effort before your pathetic demise, the Apprentice would cackle. No, a last push to destroy the Sith and restore balance, Obi-Wan would remark before discarding his cloak. Out of the dust that was formerly the Imperial base, Grandmaster Yoda too would emerge, prepared to engage the Emperor. The Emperor's lips would curl, and without a word, he would blast huge torrents of Force lightning the Grandmaster's direction, but Obi-Wan would quickly jump in front, absorbing it with his saber. Yoda would then ignite his blade and leap far into the air above Obi-Wan, crashing down to be met with a blade lock by Palpatine. The Sith Apprentice would lunge forward, striking at Obi-Wan, who would quickly deflect, swatting away the attack. All four would exchange several strikes, with Yoda and Palpatine going back and forth, and Obi-Wan and the Apprentice. The four would duel for some time, with Yoda consciously keeping Palpatine away from Obi-Wan, in which to allow him to defeat the Apprentice. Which eventually Obi-Wan would, dodging a quick strike from the Sith and running his saber across the Dark Warrior's stomach. The Apprentice would then tumble to the ground, lifeless. Obi-Wan then quickly would go aid a now struggling Yoda. Palpatine at this point would be driven into a frenzy with strength and speed neither Jedi Master had ever encountered. But together, even against the unrivaled power and skill of the Emperor, the two Jedi would persist, fighting for the fate of the galaxy and their fallen brothers and sisters of the Order. For an entire day, the three legendary warriors would battle, the hatred for the Jedi driving Palpatine on, but the hope for the galaxy driving the Jedi Masters. After an extremely lengthy period of time, the two Jedi would then knock an exhausted Emperor to the ground, disarming him. Now defeated, Palpatine would look up, smiling, and begging for the Grandmaster to strike him down in anger. Do this, I will not, Yoda would say, and together with a defeated Palpatine, the Jedi would return to Alderaan. Upon their arrival, Obi-Wan and Yoda would place Palpatine in a carbonite freezing chamber, locking him away. The two masters would then send out a beacon to all remaining Jedi to venture to Alderaan, as it was now a place of refuge. Nearly all remaining Jedi would make the journey to the planet, again feeling safety for the first time in a long time. Yoda would gather all the Jedi in order to discuss the fate of Palpatine. Many Jedi would call for his death, but Yoda would offer an alternative, as Jedi are keepers of the peace and should not operate out of hate or anger. Yoda would suggest they use the absolute power of the light side of the Force and sever Palpatine's connection to it so that he may be dealt with justly and safely. Together, all the Jedi united would use their power, cutting off the once powerful connection Palpatine once possessed, leaving him simply a man. I honestly think that this is what would happen in this scenario, as Yoda would be against killing Palpatine, and with him locked away in carbonite, undoubtedly plotting, I think the ancient knowledge of Yoda would pull through, and this is what he would suggest. It's also something that's been done before, most notably with Darth Traya and Ulic Qel-Droma in the EU. The Jedi would once again return, with both Luke and Leia among the youngest of the Order, and the Sith vanquished from the galaxy. So that is how I think it would all play out. If you look back, Vader is of course really important to the way the Empire and the galaxy was shaped, and without him, things would be much different. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. I am so thrilled that you seem to enjoy this series, and I hope to keep making them. I am also really glad we finally got one with a definitive ending. If you have any suggestions for future What If Star Wars Explained videos, please feel free to comment them down below. May the Force be with you, and have a great day.